Welcome from Serbia. We are in Castle Koźnik, built in 14th century to defend Serbia from Turks. And today I will tell you about the whole medieval history of Serbia. From the very beginning, when Serbians came here and when they fought with Avars, when they fought with Bulgars, Byzantines, and finally with Turks in 14th and 15th century. This is Ziemowit about history, and we are today talking about history of Serbia. This southern, today present territory of Serbia was in the Roman Empire since the beginning of the first millennium AD. For like 500 years, these terrains were Romanized and the Illyrian tribes here were totally Romanized. But in the middle of the 6th century, everything has changed. Because, first of all, the disease of Justinian from the 541 decimated the population here, and then the Avars came to the Pannonian Basin, and also Justinian the Great died in 565. So the situation changed a lot, and Slavic tribes used this opportunity to come here and settle in this new, very rich for them and very warm, because Slavs were coming from the north, territory. Serbs and Croats travel through Europe from present-day Ukraine through southern Poland to the Bohemian territory. There they split it. One part of Serbs moved west and they become the Połabian Serbs. They lived there for hundreds of years. Even today in modern Germany there are some villages that are cultivating Serbic identity, but they are very small minority. Most of the Serbs and Croats move south and they establish here. And for the first couple years, Serbs were cooperating with the Avars. They conquered city by city. In 584, they conquered Belgrade, and then 2 years later, they were even able to besiege Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki in northern Greece was the second most important city of Byzantine Empire. But it also shows how Byzantine Empire was weak in the end of the 6th century. But the Caesar Mauritius wanted to take the course of history, and from the 591 he tried to pull back Slavs and Avars alike, and he even managed to do so. He had great success in fighting them. But in year 602 he ordered his legions to take winter quarters north of the Dunaj River, and this was his great mistake, because his soldiers don't want to spend winter in this foreign, hostile and cold territory. So they revolted, and the officer called Phocas took the head of the revolt, and they marched to the Constantinople. They killed Mauritius and his all 4 sons, and Phocas became a new Eastern Roman emperor. Pope from the Rome even sent him congratulations letter for killing Caesar's family and becoming a new emperor of Constantinople. That's kind of strange, but history is remembering Phocas as a usurper who was ruling for only 8 years, and then he was slain, and Heraclius became a new emperor of the Byzantine Empire. And during the Focus revolt and this civil war, Serbs were practically independent beside the Avar hegemony, because Avars used Serbic tribes to make battles together with them. They used Slavs as infantry units for their raids through Byzantine Empire, through Western Europe. So all around Avar Khaganate, there were Slavic tribes subdued to Avars, and these tribes were cooperating with them. And finally, in 626, Avars wanted to conquer the biggest city in the world, Constantinople. They gathered very big army from all over the places of their great Khaganate. They were like 20,000 Avar warriors, also the same number of Slavic mercenaries. And also from the east they got reinforcement from Sassanid Empire, because Persians were fighting with Byzantine in the east, and they also were interested in conquering Constantinople. So two great armies from the west and from the east came under the great walls of Constantinople in 626. But Byzantines managed to defend the city, and Avars went away defeated and very weakened. So the whole Slavic tribes revolted against them, because they had no power left to control this vast territory they did before. So Serbs and Croats in Balkans were independent since the 626. But they get under the Byzantine supremacy, because another Caesars were trying to re-establish the Byzantine hegemony over Balkans. So Serbs were like allies to the Byzantine empires. But Slavic tribes were allowed to settle on the vast territories of Balkans and even northern Greece, where Slavic language was like a minority in this period. In the end of 7th century, Bulgars from the Eurasian steppe came here and settled the first Bulgar Khaganate on the southern banks of Dunaj. And it was also a game changer, because they were fighting Byzantium, and Byzantium has no power to take control over Serbic tribes, so they were technically speaking independent. So they created a strong nation, and they created a strong state, and when Bulgars wanted to conquer them in the beginning of 9th century, Serbs were able to defend them once in 839 and again 25 years later, when Tsar Boris was trying to conquer Serbs under the Prince Muncimir. And Muncimir won the battle. He took 12 major boyars, it's a name for Bulgarian aristocrats, and even Tsar Boris' son was captured, and Muncimir sent them away to Bulgaria and said them never come to invite Serbia again. In this time, Serbs were under the Roman Church. They were baptized by Roman clerics, and the Catholic Christianity was the most important in this period of time. But first of all, the split between Catholic and Orthodox Church was not the strongest in this period. It was 11th century when the Great Eastern Schisma came. And the most important thing is that the religious debate and the Orthodox versus Catholic religion struggle will be present in Serbian history through all the ages until 15th century, in fact. Okay, so we have the end of 9th century. Serbia was strong enough to force back the Bulgarian invasion, but Bulgaria became even stronger in the beginning of 10th century, because then Tsar Simeon was crowned as a Tsar of Bulgaria, and he wanted to become something like a new Byzantine Empire. He wanted to conquer Constantinople. He also wanted to conquer Serbia, and he did it. He did it in 917, and then he did it again in a few years later. But Bulgarian Tsardom was not so strong, and after several years, Byzantine were able to fight back Bulgarians, who took in this period of time, who took Serbia, who took Macedonia, who took northern Greece under their control. But Byzantine Empire resurrected once again, and they fought Bulgars back. Basili, the Bulgar killer, in 1014 was victorious in the great battle against Bulgars. He slain 14,000 of them, and in fact he blinded them, but it was like slaying them. And Serbia was freed from Bulgarian hegemony, but very shortly, because Byzantines briefly took over the territory, and for the next century, 11th century, will be the time when Serbia will be under Byzantine supremacy. In 11th century, former strong Serbia was divided into several territories ruled independently by local rulers. One of them was princehood of Duklans in the Adriatic shore. It was a tribe of Narentians, who were Slavic pirates on Adriatic Sea. They were Trebinians, they were Bosnians, and they were Župans of Raška. Raška in the heart of former Serbia. Of course, they were also independent Macedonian territories. And in the middle of 11th century, Byzantine Empire destroyed the Bulgar Tsarhood, and they established their border on Dunaj River once again after 300 years. So Serbs were under the Byzantine supremacy, and they were sitting there quite quietly because they couldn't have the power to uprise against them. But situation, of course, changed in the middle of 11th century, when Dobromir, one of the Duklan prince, tried to fight back Byzantines, and he was quite successful. And his son, Michael, was able to become a king. The Pope Gregory VII in 1077 gave him the crown, and he became the king of Kingdom of Zeta. It was not exactly the Serbian kingdom, because it was only the part near to the Adriatic Sea, but it was also a Slavic and Latin kingdom of Serbia, let's say so. The Kingdom of Zeta will grow for another 50 years, and then the main political power in Serbia will be the Županat of Raška, and they will create the biggest political power center in Raška. So in the 12th century, this territory settled by Slavic tribes, Serbian tribes, was in the constant struggle between Hungarians and Byzantines, because both these countries were strong, were in their good times. Hungarians took control over Croats in the beginning of 12th century, and also Byzantine Empire was rebuilding under Comnene dynasty. So Serbs were totally unable to become independent, and it was constant struggle who will be the ruler, who will be the supreme leader for them. But in the 1168, Kniaz Tichomir from Rashka and his brothers took over the big territory, and one of his brothers, Tichomir's brothers, was Stefan Nemanjić. And Stefan Nemanjić will be the creator of ruling family in Serbia. For another years, he will kick his brothers out and will become a suzerain ruler of Serbs. Then he will fight with Byzantines, but he will be allied with Hungarians. King Bela III will aid him in fighting Byzantines in 1186, and then Stefan will conquer some territories in Macedonia. In his old ages, he will pass the Kniaz title to his son, also Stefan, and he will go to the monastery, famous Greek monastery in Athos, and he will become Simeon, modest priest. And when he dies, his son will spread the cult of his father, Saint Simeon. And under the cult of Saint Simeon, his son Stefan will conquer his enemies, will get some victories, and all the victories he gained was dedicated to the Saint Father Simeon. And in 1217, Stefan will become a king, but he will be crowned by the Pope Legate, who will be sent from Rome. So it's quite surprising, because the culture here was mostly Greek Orthodox, but the king was from the Pope's blessing. But the cultural struggle will be long, and in fact, finally, the Orthodox and Greek culture will win, and Serbia today, for example, is totally Orthodox country. Beside their kingdom was the Latin kingdom and the Catholic kingdom, let's say so. Stefan Nemanjić was ruling Serbia until 1227. After him, there will be his son Radosław, ruling for 7 years. Then his son Władysław, ruling for several years. And then his third son, Stefan Uroš I, will be the very important Serbian king who will take solid fundaments for the Serbian future power. But we have to speak about very big changes on political map of Balkans in the first half of 13th century. Because in the end of 12th century, Bulgarian kingdom was raised again, and Bulgars took a lot of territories from Byzantium again, and we have now strong Bulgaria in the east part of the Balkans. Also, in 1204, crusade will come from Europe, and they will be able to finally conquer Constantinople. The fall of Constantinople from 1204 is a very important turning point in the history of Europe, because Byzantium, Constantinople, was a city that no one could conquer before. Avars, Bulgars, Huns, Arabs, Sassanids, Persians, no one was able to do it, even Kievan Rus. And now the Crusaders from Europe took this great city and they split Byzantine Empire into two halves. One will be the Nicaean Empire in the east and the Despotate of Epir in the west. So Serbia lose one big enemy, one strong neighbor, and they gain two other neighbors, Despotate of Epir to the south and Latin Empire to the east. Also in 1241 the Mongol invasion came to Europe, and the Mongols destroyed almost entirely Hungarian kingdom. They fled away to the steppe in the next year, but Hungarians were massacred under the Mohi River in April 1241. And from now on, Hungarians will be not so strong, and Serbia would be able to maintain much more independent politics and gain some territories in the north, in the west near Adriatic coast, and in the south. He also did very much to strengthen the economy of Serbia. He made trade agreements with very important Adriatic city-states like Dubrovnik and Split. He also take advantage of Mongol right, because Mongols plunder a lot of Hungary, and in Hungary, in Transylvania, they were German miners who were extracting very precious minerals then, but they flee when they saw the Mongol horde, and Serbian king invited them to Serbia, and they created a lot of precious mines in Serbia, the mines that were in fact abandoned since antiquity, but now the tin mines and the silver mines were open again, and it was a very important flow of money for the king. Also, he supported Greek Orthodox culture. They built a lot of monasteries, churches, and the state was growing and growing under his rule. But of course, finally, he died. But before that, he was even managed to attack Hungarians. Hungarians that were 100 years ago overwhelmingly strong. Now Serbs were able to cross Dunaj to the north and attack Hungarians. After him, the rule was took by his son Dragutin, but he was someone who was more for the Western fraction, the fraction that wanted to recreate the Latin Empire in the Constantinople, because in 1261 Byzantines were able to take Constantinople again, and Europe wanted to establish Latin Empire there again. So Dragutin with Louis the Andagaven was trying to make a coalition, to make another crusade, to take Constantinople. But Louis the Andagaven had his own problems in 1282, and finally Dragutin was kicked out, and another son of Stefan was on the Serbian throne. Stefan II Milutin was taking advantage of weak Byzantine Empire, and he was conquering territories to the south. He conquered Macedonia and was trying to conquer even northern part of Greece. But his most important opponent in this time were Bulgarians, who were under Mongolian supremacy, and sometimes Mongols helped them in their affairs on Balkans. After Stefan Milutin was Stefan Uroš III, and he was ruling only for 10 years, but he made a decisive victory over Bulgars in 1330, when Bulgars came to conquer Macedonia. He ambushed them with his knights, and even he was supported with Western European knights, and they crushed Bulgarians like no one before. They killed a lot of them, and Tsar Michael from Bulgaria was also slain fleeing from the battlefield. 1 year later, this king was dethronized because he don't wanted to conquer Bulgaria nor Byzantine Empire. He just was content with this victory. He sent his daughter to be the Tsaris of Bulgaria, and he made peace with Caesar Andronik from the Byzantine. So the aristocracy in Serbia doesn't want this peaceful politics, and they overthrow him. They put him to the castle, and he was suffocated. And another king, Uroš III, the suffocator, was the one who probably suffocated his ancestor, and then he took advantage of weak Bulgaria and weak Byzantine Empire, and he conquered much more territories to the east and to the south. For example, he conquered Epir, and he was trying even to take over Thessaloniki, but he died while besieging this weak city. But before, 10 years before, in fact 9 years before, in 1346, he created a Tsardom of Serbia. He became a Tsar, and he wanted to establish a great empire, Serbo-Greek Empire, where these two nations will rule over the old territories formerly ruled by Byzantines. But it was easy in this time because Turks was coming through the east, and almost all Byzantine Empire was lost to the Turks in the Anatolia. After his death, unfortunately, he had no good heirs. His son Uroš the Unready was only ruler of the part of former Great Serbia. The territory split between a lot of small kняz, župans and bans, and they were unable to withstand the foreign pressures. But in the 14th century, they tried twice to stop Ottoman invasion. And now I will tell you about two very important battles that took place in the end of 14th century. And these battles were very important because if they succeed, they could manage to stop the Turkish invasion on Europe, and in fact change the whole European history. In the year 1371, not very big Turkish army was marching near Adrianople on the western side of the Bosphor Pass, and against them was formed great Christian coalitions formed of Bulgars, Serbs, Hungarians, Bosnians, and some Latin knights. And they had like 4 times more soldiers, and they were preparing for the battle that was going to be held in the next day. But in the night, the Turks, the Ottoman Turks, made a surprising attack on their camp, and they massacred the army. 15,000 Turks defeated 4 times more Christian knights and other soldiers, and they won decisive victory under Adrianople in 1371. But Christians had another opportunity to stop Turks, because 18 years later, on Kosovo field, there were another great battle. Hungarians, Bosnians, Serbs, Bulgarians and Wallachians, and even knights from Poland, that is 2,000 kilometers north from Kosovo, stand on the field under the leadership of Tsar Lazar, and against them was a big Turkish army under the Sultan Murad I. And the Turks attacked on the full-scale frontal attack, and on the right flank, Sultan's son Bayezid I was leading the attack against Hungarian and Bosnian forces, and he managed to crush them. They were fleeing, and Serbs were left alone on the battlefield. And then Turks encircled them and killed almost all of them. Murad I, Sultan, died during the battle, but his son Bayezid took command and he led their troops to final victory. Tsar Lazar was captured and he was executed on the battlefield. And from this period of time, from the late 14th century, this castle that we're here in Koźnik in South Serbia was built. This was a castle meant to withstand the Turkish invasion. As you can see, it's very perfectly located on the steep hill, very nicely fortified. Even after 600 years, it still looks mighty. And there were several more battles trying to hold the Turks, but they were unstoppable in this period of time, in the early 15th century. And finally, in 1459, Serbia get under Turkish hegemony, and they will be under their rule for another few hundred years. But they are very good ethnicity. They are a very strong nation with strong culture and beliefs, and even today they preserved their traditions, they preserved their language, and in 21st century, after 15 centuries of living here, Serbians are still Slavic nations holding their Slavic traditions, of course with a lot of mixes from Greek tradition, from Turkish tradition, and so on. I hope you enjoyed this story about the history of Serbia. Let me know in the comments what would the history of Europe would look like if Serbs would be able to stop the Turks in the 14th or 15th century. Thank you for watching. See you in the next movie. Bye.